incredibly play Mr. Malmsteen's music. So I thought I'd come together with the universe today and do part 2.5 of the 20 albums that changed my life. I realized at certain points as I've been thinking about this list that I missed some things, and so instead of expanding the list beyond the 20, I sort of slotted them in between two others, and I don't know if they're going to merit the full treatment. Who knows? I don't know. Whatever. So, Yngwie Malmsteen. I remember I was working my first job at Mountain Mike's Pizza. I believe it was about this era, maybe a little bit before. But all the people that I hung out with previously, were the people that worked at Mountain Mike's Pizza, and a lot of the music during that time period came through that association. So that's why I mention it. But Yngwie Malmsteen was a name that came up. This happened twice. This happened with the next record too. This is the individual in the next record. Their name came up far sooner than I heard any music. Yngwie Malmsteen was a legend, a whispered name long before I ever heard anything that he did. It was the era of that, the rumor, and there was this really heavy rumor of him and that name, and the name was strange enough unto itself that it caught your attention. Yngwie Malmsteen. Well, wait, what was that? It doesn't sound so as strange as it did at the time. It's a very outlandish name, and people were saying, he's God. Yngwie is God. That was a thing that emerged early on. Yngwie is God, and I was like, I didn't know anything about him until one day I came into work and someone was playing the Steeler album in the scullery where they wash the dishes. Somebody had it on a boombox in there, and apparently, by the way, I guess Yngwie Malmsteen isn't his name, like for real. His actual name is like Lars something, Lars Lannerback. I guess he didn't think Lars Lannerback was exotic enough or something, which I think Lars Lannerback's a pretty good. I would have probably Lannerback. I think it's B-A-C-K. I would have changed it to B-A-C-H. Lars Lannerback. That's a great name. Anyway, he changed it. I guess his middle name is Yngwie, and he changed it to Yngwie, and his mom's name is Malmsteen, and then he added an E to make it Malmsteen. He changed Yngwie Malmsteen to Yngwie Malmsteen, which I don't know. You can't follow. It's a great name. Yeah, fun name to say. And what's interesting is it sounds like he would be maybe a fun guy, as a result of that. But I guess at least back then, he wasn't such a fun guy. He was really, I guess I shouldn't say he wasn't fun. He was very dedicated and very intolerant of anything that he didn't want or like or was interested in. At least that's what I'm given to understand. He had trouble playing with others. But yeah, I came into work one day, and Hot on Your Heels, I think, was the name off the Steeler album. I listened to that Steeler album recently, and it's kind of stunning how bad it is. It's really bad. Lyrically, compositionally, the songs are just awful. They're just the worst derivative sludge that came out of the attempt to create popular heavy metal at the time. Just it's just awful. It's no wonder that it didn't do anything. And the only thing that's of any value whatsoever is the sections that Yngwie's in, and all of them are brilliant. It's amazing that he is there. He's already there, fully fleshed out, fully, the full range of his talents are already fucking there. It's unreal. I mean, and I think he's 19 or something. I mean, it's crazy when I think back. I've never been a great guitar player, but I certainly wasn't that fucking great at 19. I don't know what it is about these people, what it is about their minds, that allow them to excel in a direction so thoroughly and completely. I mean, his ability, not only dexterous in terms of dexterity, but his ability to hold, scale structures and keys in his mind is incomprehensible to me. I talked about this before, about the sort of the tragedy of influence when it comes to me. I would say that all these records and these individuals, Randy Rhoads, Yngwie, Eddie Van Halen, people that are going to come after this, all influenced me, quote unquote. I mean, but they didn't influence my playing, because I was never good enough or smart enough to really understand what it is that they were even doing. Like I remember on this record, I'll get to it, Icarus's Dream Suite, Opus whatever number it is. That song, just blew me away, and I was completely absorbed in it. But did I take anything away from it, like of musical value that I've used later on? No, I didn't, because I wasn't good enough, but that doesn't mean I didn't appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is about these guys that are able to excel so far at such a young age, or at any age, I guess. I mean, age really doesn't come into it. I just, for whatever reason, those chambers in my brain were too small to hold that information on the level that these guys did. Having my Alka-Seltzer. Last night was a festive night. So, Steeler. I went. I remember I walked into the scullery and stood in front of that boombox, and there's a sequence at like the fourth song in, where there's an acoustic. Maybe that's a different song. There's an acoustic little solo that he does, and then there's an extended electric solo that he does. I think it's before Hot on Your Heels, which is just it's an abysmal song. And every cliche, you can possibly imagine, and Ron Keel, as a singer, I mean, he's not terrible, but again, every cliche that you can possibly imagine, every derivative approach, it's just, I mean, I'm sure they had fans, but I can't imagine why they would. I mean, if you compare this record to something like, Judas Priest or Scorpions, or it's Iron Maiden. It's not even remotely on the same level. And apparently Yngwie did. One of the reasons he left the band, apparently, is that he wasn't really all that happy with the complexity and the simplicity of the music, and I wouldn't have blamed him. And apparently they looked upon him as the new guy and didn't really take into account his opinions. And then he left to join Alcatraz, which that's an interesting scenario too, because I went back and I listened to that Alcatraz album, but mainly I listened to the live album that they released. I can't remember the name of it. Was it On Parole? No, it's not On Parole. I can't remember, but apparently Yngwie wasn't happy with it. He didn't want it released, and I can kind of maybe see why. I mean, it doesn't sound great. It's not a great sounding live album. And Graham Bonnet, man, I mean, I like Graham Bonnet, but his voice is, he doesn't try to sing high. He does sing high, like on, particularly, I think it's Hiroshima Mon Amour on that live album. It's just so high, and he hits the notes, but it doesn't sound appealing like at all. It's just like, holy shit, it's just some guy fucking screaming, man. It's just screaming that you know, it's not out of key or anything, but it's like, I do not find the effect and the result pleasing at all. So, yeah, but anyway, I remember standing in front of that boombox and listening to that, and really not really comprehending entirely what I was hearing, but being utterly amazed. He was doing all those Yngwie things that he'd already already had in place. All these insane arpeggios that nobody'd ever done before. All these scales and classically oriented sorts of ideas, from Paganini and Vivaldi and I don't remember. I remember it like it was too much. Once again, this seems to be a recurring theme with being overwhelmed. I remember being overwhelmed by it and being like, I can't even. What is this? I mean, it was just so beyond my ability to handle. And but so that kind of I didn't ever for whatever reason I didn't go out and get that album, and that kind of remained my only sort of experience with him up to that, at that time. And then his name just, clearly still kept circling around, and, Yngwie. And then I think I did at the time hear one of the Alcatraz albums, but I never bought one. I never owned one. There's only the one with him on it, and then the live album, the two, I guess. And then Stan Jamaica once again, my friend from that era. We haven't talked in a long time. If you haven't seen this, Stan, man, hey, how you doing? I hope you're good. He got a hold of a copy of Rising Force, the first record, and the first song that he played for me was Icarus's Dream. What is it? Icarus's Dream. What? Sweet Opus 4. So I guess the titling convention kind of. So the name is Icarus's Dream. Is it Suite Opus 4, or is it Icarus's Dream Suite Opus 4? Opus means work, right? So I guess the full title would be Icarus's Dream Suite. I don't know. I guess it's based on an original a piece by Bach, because I've heard that. I didn't at the time, but the opening strain, which I love, that where he's just doing the sustained bits. It's lovely. It's gorgeous. I guess he lifted that from something from Bach. I guess I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be, but I know he did lift it from somebody. I'm pretty sure it's Bach. Anyway, the rest of the song is just wonderful. That opening guitar figure, everything about that song, just I loved it. And the thing is, it's like if I could go back and talk to my younger self, it's like, yeah, you love this shit. You love it. You think it's great. Why can't you play it? Why don't you figure this stuff out? Why don't you absorb it, a little bit more, instead of just listen to it and just do your own noodly thing that you're doing on the guitar? I don't know why. I was lazy. Yeah, I guess I didn't sit down and figure any of these things out, and when I could have played them, like that opening guitar figure. I want to play now. I'm probably gonna figure it out today. Just because it's not particularly difficult, but it's lovely. A lot of the parts in that, and even some of the lead stuff, isn't beyond me to play now. I just never bothered to figure it out, and I don't know why. I just didn't. But that record, it was one of those records where it didn't leave probably my tape player. I was, I don't know if we even had a record player at this point. I think we did, but we weren't a terribly wealthy lot. And so for a lot of what I listened to was on cassette early on. I don't know whatever ended up happening to that little box record player I had. That went by the wayside at some point. I lost track of it, no idea where it went. My mom eventually did buy like a Montgomery Ward's kind of, all-in-one turntable cassette player radio with 2 speakers attached. She did buy one of those for us for Christmas one year, and then that was our staple for forever. I remember that was what I listened to records on, but I'm not sure what year that happened. That was probably when I was 10 or 11. I don't know. It's too hard to say anymore. But I did listen to a lot of things on cassette, and I had a copy of, I never did own this on LP, not until much later. I have a copy now in my storage unit, sitting there doing nothing. I listened to this over and over and over again. I just never got tired of it. And there's just something about it, even now, when I compare, because I went back and I listened to a lot of his ensuing records too. I listened to Marching Out and Trilogy and Odyssey, and then a couple of, not all of the rest of them, but samples here. And I listened to his latest record, Parabellum. And what's amazing is we're doing the bookend thing, the first record to the last record, Parabellum. He's clearly an unbelievable musician, and he's clearly practiced, and he's clearly refined things that he felt like needed to be refined, because he's much faster, he's much more articulate, he's much smoother, if you listen to his early stuff, you can distinctly hear him picking. His picking is the aggressiveness of his attack is apparent, and I would say that a lot of that is gone in the last record I listened to. It's all mostly legato. It sounds like it's all been greased, and is smoothed out to the point where they could almost be synthesizer lines. But I liked his attack. I liked the sound. I like the sound of everything on this record, the production, because he's got actual musicians, for one. On Parabellum, I don't think those were actual musicians. I think those were all, it was a drum machine. I think it was he was probably him playing bass, but he's never really given much. I think he played bass on this too, on the first album, but you can hear the bass, and it has some, character of an instrument. And I love the keyboards on this album. The keyboards of Jens Johansson, I think who it was. He and Yngwie are born to play together. They're born to play. They were wonderful. Their interplay is magnificent. And Barrymore Barlow on drums is perfect for Yngwie. He's got this, from Jethro Tull and from all his experience, he's got this innate mystical, medieval kind of feel and sense, and it just fits perfectly with the classical environment. And it's like, why didn't these again? Yngwie apparently just didn't play well with others. He wanted credit for writing everything. I don't know, whatever. I don't want to make any assumptions, but it didn't happen. I would have just as soon seen Barrymore Barlow go on. Maybe he did play on the second record. I'm not sure. But he certainly, Yngwie certainly moved more towards electronic instruments as his albums progressed, and I'm out at that point. I like musicians. I like hearing musicians play, and drums are important to me. Bass is important to me. If keyboards are there, they're important, and the sound and how they're incorporated into the sound of the record is absolutely crucial. And Yngwie doesn't seem to be all that interested in that at this point in time. The drums were just thunderous cannons on the new album. Really the only thing of any value sonically was the guitar, and that's fine if that's what you come for. And his playing is just as good as it ever was, if not better. But I just didn't, the songs and the production I just did not like, and I love it here. I love the sound of the drums. That first song, Black Star, with the drums, and there's a lot of reverb on the snare, which is unusual. I mean, at least unusual to my ears, and I think it sounds great. And the performance of Barrymore Barlow is integral here. Again, that's all. I guess that's really important for me. It's really a thing that I hear and look for and notice when it's not there. You can with this record, I like a production where you can hear the room, and that's what sets Led Zeppelin apart, in my opinion. Is you can when you're listening to one particular aspect, you know, you can hear the room that they're in, you know, and here you can the guitars and the instrumentation are sitting in different places in space in the recording. You know, the guitar's sitting up here, the bass and the drums are sitting out here somewhere in the field, and then other elements that come in fit in a different spot in that sound field, you know, and I love that. You know, particularly with the opening strains of Icarus's Dream Suite, there's gentle keyboards going on, you know, and then there's you know, Yngwie's guitar, which is sort of floating. It creates this mist, you know, of the keyboard, and then the individual punctuations of the melody from the guitar. You feel that in the space, and you hear the atmosphere that guitar is situated in. I've always hated recordings where the music and the vocals and everything is just sitting right in front of you, you know, just with unadorned. All you hear is the sterile sound of the instrument or the voice itself. You know, I just don't think that is effective. I want to hear the atmosphere. I want to feel, you know, the density of where that sound is sitting in space. You know, I remember one of the first times I listened to Cream, Cream's first record, and I remember not being terribly impressed with that record. I mean, obviously Eric Clapton was great. There's a lot of wonky goofiness with that record. What's that bass player's name? Jack. Jack is no, it's not Jack. What's the lead singer bass player for Cream? Come on. Whatever, that guy. He's a little goofball. But anyway, a couple of the songs I was listening to, you know, I really felt like you could close your eyes and you can actually kind of walk in between, you know, the instruments, you know, like trees. They were so monolithic, these sounds that they had, and they were monumental, and they were such that the resolution was such where you could literally feel your way between them, and that creates a good production value for me. And you know, and Yngwie was, and I'm pretty sure Yngwie produced this record himself, and he was just, I'm so sad that he left kind of that sensibility behind, because, you know, again, Icarus's Dream Suite really becomes the focal point, although there's a lot of songs on this record that I think are just absolutely superb. That one's sort of, you know, for me, the highlight. That was the one that really nailed me the first, and I I wanted to, you know, understand more, try to, and all the way he weaves together the crescendo that builds up into from the initial acoustic figure. He starts with the keyboard and the guitars, and then he introduces the acoustic figure, and then builds that up until he introduces the electric, you know, figure that's related to that acoustic, and then builds and builds until he gets to the same repetition of that opening sequence, but with more of a rhythmic drive. And then he builds up to this unbelievable moment where he comes in with the guitar solo in earnest, where he's got all these things going on, and he does this slide, this woo into the solo. It's masterfully done, not only in terms of performance, but in terms of the arrangement and how he puts the orchestration together. He's literally using the band like a concert master would utilize an orchestra, and that's what makes it so great for me. And he kind of abandons this at this point. In ensuing albums, he just kind of goes back, even with the next record, and it's a good song. The first song off of Marching Out, I'll See the Light Tonight, you know, it's a good song, but it's like he abandoned this approach and just went to kind of standard sort of metal tropes. There really aren't a lot of standard metal tropes. This isn't a heavy metal album. You know, I mean, you could say As Above, So Below is a metal song. Because it's awesome. It's Jeff Scott Soto's vocal performance is amazing, and it's a great song, but it's different. It's a little off kilter, as is Now Your Ships Will Burn, which is another great song, a great topic. You know, there's no love tunes here. You could say that some of the instrumentals, have some romantic element to them because of the nature of the composition, and his approach to playing is very romantic in the romantic, traditional style of classical music. But, and again, here, this is, I don't know if you can hear this, and if it's going to copyright me, who cares, whatever. But that's right when I was talking about where he drops back to this acoustic and then does this crescendo. His arrangements are masterful. His orchestrations of the instrumentation is masterful. One of the, very few, if anybody, like Yes tried to do things like this. Deep Purple tried to do some things like this. No one ever came close, except I'd say Randy in Diary of a Madman, the song, where he's trying to weave in orchestral elements and put together something like this. He was on the same track, he was doing the same kind of things. And Yngwie here, I guess, I don't know, man, he mastered it, did a beautiful thing, and then decided he did it and he wanted to go back and do standard kind of metal tunes. Or more likely, through conversations with his record companies and with his management, they encouraged him to pursue a different direction that would be more monetarily lucrative. And I think to a certain extent it was, because from what I'm given to understand, his fourth album, Odyssey, I think, is his best-selling record. This is not his best-selling record, which is just, I don't understand, but I guess I'm not the average record-buying public. But he just did such a unique, beautiful thing here, and he moved on to Marching Out, which again is a good record. It's okay, but it's got some sincere weak points. The first, looks like I just got a little volume boost there. The first song, I'll See the Light, is great. I Am a Viking, I've always liked that. It's a little, it's teetering into goofball land. I Am a Viking, it's just a little too straightforward, the delivery, but it's a good song. Disciples of Hell, and we start to see some really derivative nonsense here. And there's a number of other tracks that just don't work for me. They just, I'm just not interested. And then when you get to Trilogy, the third record, the very first song is You Don't Remember, I'll Never Forget. I heard that, and I think I probably didn't listen to the rest of the record. It was a new singer, for one. It was, Jeff Scott Soto wasn't on there, which was a deal breaker for me at that point, because I was a fan. I thought Jeff Scott Soto was amazing. I really, really liked him. He was up there with anybody else that I listened to at the time. I wanted to hear more, and I did not like the guy that I don't even know his name, the guy who replaced him. And yeah, I think I did make it through the rest of that record, but I don't think I ever listened to it again. I just didn't like the direction he went. This wasn't for me. It was for somebody else, and I guess it was popular, because I'm told it sold well. And then his next record, Odyssey, which I really haven't given much attention to at all, was his best-selling record. I actually own a copy of Marching Out that he signed. I didn't get it signed from him personally, but I found it in a record shop somewhere, and flipped it over and noticed that it had a scrawl on it, in that silvery gel pen, and I was like, whoa, and I Googled it, and sure enough, it's a signature, which is pretty cool. I'd rather have the first album signed. That would be a thing. But, from what I'm given to understand, if I saw Yngwie Malmsteen in public, I probably wouldn't approach him. Although, the stories I've heard from the old days, and they're just stories. He was, really prickly fellow, got into an altercation with Graham Bonnet in Alcatraz. That was pretty. I'm told was. I've read some accounts that are pretty brutal. I won't, talk about it here. Google it if you're interested. And also some interviews early on that didn't go well. He just, he was what's prima donna is the, is there a primo don? Is there a male version of that? The primo don. I guess that would be right? The first woman, prima donna, first woman, primo don, first man. He was the primo don in his mind. And, I guess a lot of people forgave him for it because he was that good. If you're going to go around being a cocky jerk, thinking you're the best when you kind of actually are, I guess people can't hold it against you for too long. I mean, in terms of his playing, there's nobody that can touch him with regard to what he can do. Now, if he demonstrated that he was versatile in other areas, he would be even more a formidable individual. I've never heard him, kind of play in different sorts of scenarios. Like, I'm told he released a blues album, which I'm intrigued by, where he released, like, he did blues covers. I'm going to check that out and see how well he did in that. But if he did more diversified sorts of things, I think it would really serve to, make him even more revered figure. But even as it is, he's Yngwie Malmsteen. And even though his records and his compositions aren't strong to a certain extent, he never really had that one banger hit, not one. Whereas if you want to talk about other legendary figures or bands, that's not really the case, obviously. And that's, I don't know what that is, I don't know why that is. Is it because of his singularity, his singular focus on his neoclassical, sort of approach, or his focus on performance and solos? I don't know. He just never did. He never did produce that one, hit song that really encapsulated his sort of ambience. But yeah, this record was a big one for me, and it led me right into the next guy that at the time. And this is another guy that I don't follow to this day. He's still releasing records, but I don't really give him much attention. I only, listen to the first 3, maybe the first 2, but he was an equally profound figure, and he kind of followed the same sort of trajectory that Yngwie did. And I'll get to him next time. So I think that's about all I have to say about Mr. Malmsteen. I could probably go on, but it, wouldn't add anything substantive. So, all right, this was part 2.5, right? 20 albums that changed my life. So we'll see you next time.